So I hope you're doing well tonight. Tonight's meeting is about house buying. So it's very important to know how to buy a house correctly because you can make a big mistake, especially if it's your first house. So the Bible talks to us about how to buy a house. Um, in Proverbs, let me see, just a second. In Proverbs 31. Proverbs 31. Starting with verse, it talks about, Proverbs 31 talks about the virtuous woman, right? And so I'm putting my Bible in English. So Proverbs 31 says, who can find a virtuous woman? Starting with verse 10. It says, who can find a virtuous woman? For her price is far above rubies. The heart of her husband does safely trust in her, so that he shall have no need of spoil, right? She will do him good and not evil all the day of her life. She seeketh wool and flax, and worketh diligently with her hands. She's like the merchant's ships. She bringeth her food from afar. She rises also while it is yet night, and giveth meat to her husband, meat meaning food, and a portion to her maidens. She considereth a field and buyeth it. With the fruit of her hands she planteth a vineyard, right? And so on and so on. So the virtuous woman is actually a business lady. She's able to run her house as a business lady. It's important to consider how to buy a house, because if we buy a house the wrong way, the Bible says we are fools. In Luke chapter 14, verse 28, Luke chapter 14, verse 28, it says, for which of you, intending to build a tower, here it's a tower, but it could be a house, sitteth not down first and counteth the cost, whether he have sufficient to finish it. Lest, verse 29, lest happily, after he has laid the foundation and he's not able to finish it, all that behold it, begin to mock him. Right? So if you want to build something, if you want to buy a house or build a house, you need to sit down first, consider the cost, make sure you're doing it the right way, plan ahead so that you don't find yourself in trouble after buying it or after building it. So we have to think wisely. And the Bible is full of common sense wisdom, but it's important for us to know what to do. So the first thing, before you consider the process of how to buy a house, and we'll do that in a little bit, you need to think if you are ready to buy. Am I ready to buy a house? And so the first thing I was, before the meeting, Claudette was here logged in. And so I was talking with her. The very first thing you absolutely need to do is your budget. Even when you go to the bank to ask for a loan, they will ask you your budget. They'll ask you your tax return. They'll ask you everything, right? And so you need to sit down and do your budget. This is the third session by now, right? So you need to know how to do a budget. And I was hoping that some of you would have done it, because when you do your budget, you know your expense. You have to list all your household expenses, right? In order to start buying a house can be, is a very good process. It's a very good asset on the long term. But if you do it wrong in the short term, it can be really hard. You can be struggling a lot. Because guess what? If your water heater breaks and you're a renter, you just call the owner, right? You call your landlord, they fix the water heater. But as soon as you buy a house and the water heater breaks down, because they break every 10 years, right? So if your water heater breaks down, who do you call? Nobody. You fix it. So a house on the short term can be a financial challenge if you don't calculate well. But on a long term, it's a very, very good asset, because once you have a mortgage, your mortgage is fixed. Every month you pay the same. But for those of you that have rented, you all know that a rent goes up every year. A little bit, but after 20 years, it's not the same price. If you have been renting for a long time, just remember how much was your rent 20 years ago and what it is now. It's not the same, right? And so not only that, but renting is like you're giving money away to somebody. Now that person takes care of you and all your needs, right? But they're still making a profit off you. Not all the money you give to somebody for rent is wasted. So if you're not ready to buy, don't rush and buy. Because some people will try to on the internet, they will tell you, oh, it's the same price as your rent. So whatever you pay as a rent, we can pay it as a mortgage. And why would you give money away to people, right? Well, not exactly. If it was so, everyone would buy, right? So it's a good thing to buy a house long term, but just remember that if you're not ready, this house can be a curse and not a blessing. You know what happens when you buy a house and you're not ready? You have a storm that breaks something. You have your water heater that goes wrong. You have your heating system that breaks. You have to change the windows. You have the paint to do, and you have your deck that needs to be sanded, and all of that at the same time. And then you have all kind of problem. Do you know what Murphy Law is? Murphy Law is a humorous way to say that when something can go wrong, it will, right? So things that can go wrong will go wrong. If you don't plan those wrong things, you will be in trouble. So, for example, people say, "Well, you're pessimists." You think that you always see things in black, and it's going to rain instead of sunshine. I see the sunshine and the flowers, and you see the rain and and the storms. But I'm positive it's going to rain. You need to buy an umbrella. I don't know when, but you need to buy an umbrella because it's going to rain someday. And if you're not ready for that, you'll have trouble. So that's why you need to be ready and ask yourself, am I ready to buy? Is it the right time? So you first have to do your budget. If you're not able to do your budget, you're not able to buy a house. You have to add up your income and list all your household expenses. And then the next step is to calculate all your home ownership costs. So your home ownership cost will be your mortgage, because I doubt that most of us can buy a house cash. Some of us can. Some of us are able to save all their lives, or for a good amount of time, they live in a tiny apartment and then they buy their first house cash. That has happened. But most of us, we go to the bank for a mortgage, right? So you have to calculate your home ownership cost, which is mortgage, insurance. Insurance will not exactly be the same as a renter's insurance, so it will be more expensive. You have to, and you can call for a quote. You say, hey, I'm considering buying a house, be a 3-bedroom house. It will be that size, approximately how much can it cost? And they'll give you an estimate. So insurance, taxes, right? Local taxes. Usually it's your town, your municipality will tell you how much taxes you pay. And you add all of that, and all of that has to be less than 25% of your income, of your net income. So your mortgage, insurance, and taxes have to be less than 25% of your income. Don't buy a home if you can't afford it. Don't buy it. Now, how do you calculate your mortgage? Well, I'll explain you a little bit later, but your mortgage has to be 15-year fixed mortgage. And I'll help you see that and calculate that a little bit later. But no more than 15 years fixed mortgage. Don't fall for the trap of a variable rate. Don't fall for the trap of 30-year mortgage. And I'll show you in a little bit why. But so you take your mortgage. You have a lot of websites that help you calculate your mortgage, your mortgage cost. Like you enter the value of the home you're considering, and 15-year fix, and it'll tell you how much it costs. All right. So, and you add the insurance to that and the taxes to this. Usually taxes are paid every quarter, every year. So you have to divide it by 12. But you can easily calculate that. So a 15-year fixed mortgage no more than 25% of your income, because you need room for the rest. You need room for a lot of things. In the next class, I'll talk about how to invest. So you need room for investment. You need room for repairs. You need room to live. You need some money still. You can't spend all your money for your mortgage and then being broke, right? So 25% of your household income. If you're not ready for that, if it's more than 25% of your income, that means you're looking for a house that's too expensive. You need to look down in prices. We can calculate a little bit, and I'll share my screen. And I want to share a little bit what a monthly payment can be, right? So here you have the home value, let's say 200,000, for example. You have your down payment. I'll talk about this in a little bit. I would recommend 20% as a down payment, and I'll show you why. But if I'll not be mad at you if you only put 5%. 5% is the minimum, but I would recommend putting 20, and you will save a lot by putting 20. Now, the time of a mortgage, as I showed you, is 15-year fixed. And the interest rates right now, it's a little bit lower. So you have to look at the different interest rates with your banks. Right now, it's closer to 2 point something, so 2.5. I don't know. Maybe one of you can tell me if they have already looked for mortgages. I've looked about a year and a half ago. So when we bought our house, so now it may be a little bit different. Let's see. Can anyone tell me if they have looked what quotes you were getting? Let me see. Can you unmute yourself if you have any quote already?
Okay, 2.2 to 2.5.
All right, yeah, that's about that. All right, so let's put 2.2. That was a great rate. 2.2. All right. So my current rate for me, and I'm just going to tell you that in a little bit, it's 1.8 when I negotiated that last year. All right. But that was a great rate. And right now, 2.2 is very reasonable. Okay. So in Europe, it will be a lot cheaper than that. It will be closer to 1. All right. But 2.2 is very reasonable. So if you put those informations, usually the monthly payment will be around $1,300 a month. All right. And that includes property tax, which is about $2,000 a year, depending. For a 200,000 house, that would be about $2,000 a year. It depends on your locality. You can ask them, and your insurance will be around $800, maybe $900 a year. So those are assumptions. You can refine those numbers with this calculator. But
how much is the monthly payment?
About $1,300, as you can see here, about $1,300.
Okay.
For 15-year fixed rates at around 2.2%. All right. So now it's very easy to calculate this times 4, because it has to be no more than a fourth of your income. So times 4. So you do 1,300 times 4. And that's 5,200. You have to have $5,200 net every month, right? That has to be your income to be able to afford a $200,000 house. If you put a $300,000 house, then obviously this will change. It will be 1912, right? So your income has to be 4 times that a month. You understand what I'm saying? So you look at your income divided by 4 and tweak these numbers here, tweak your home value to see how much house you can afford. So some people say, well, I want a $500,000 house. All right. If you want a $500,000 house, you have to have 4 times 3 is $12,000 net a month, right? So you look at your income divided by 4. And this number, look at this number and make it vary. So this calculator It's www.daveramsey.com/mortgage calculator, mortgage-calculator. So this is one good way to look at it.
So if it's 1,100, what would it be?
What's
per
that?
Month? If it was 1,100 per month, what would be the amount you would have?
Maximum amount you can have? All right. So for example, you cannot afford a $200,000 house. So maybe 180. Let's see that. 180. That would be almost 11,000. So I would be comfortable with 180. You can probably negotiate your insurance a little bit lower, especially if you don't have like a, you know, expensive stuff like pools and things like that. Those can add up to the costs, but around $180,000 would be around the 11,000. So you know, you can adjust it a little bit, but 25% of your income, because you need some room to invest later on. Investing in a home is great, but you don't want to have only a home when you retire. You want to have a home paid for, and you want to have some $1 million in the bank to be able to, you know, have some good retirement. So don't overbuy, you know, don't overbuy your home. Your goal is at least to pay it in 15 years. When you have a 15-year mortgage, you have to pay it in 15 years. You know, look at what 15 years from now will be. You don't want to be 60 and still, or retired and 65, you know, retirement. You don't want to be retired and still having to pay a mortgage because you don't have any income anymore, or very little income. So you want to have a paid for home when you're retired, and you want to have some cash flow to be able to invest so that when you retire, you have some money aside, right? Now, I'll come back to that, but let's see. Okay, let's see, for example, I want to see another calculator. All right. This is a mortgage payoff calculator, and I'll show you now why you should not buy a 30-year mortgage and why you should go with a 15. So let me share the screen again. All right, so let's say you bought the $200,000 house. All right, 200,000 is a good first house. You don't need to go high for first house, right? So $200,000, that's what you borrowed. Now, first date of payment, let's say it's today, we're November 16. So that's 11/16/2020. All right. The loan length is, let's say, 15 years. And we said for the interest rates, what did we say? 2.2? 2.2 to
2.5.
Right. So let's say 2.2, because if you have a 2.2 offer, don't go with a 2.5. A small percentage can do a lot of things. So this is your result. Now, this is your result here. You will actually pay not 200,000, of course. You'll pay 234,000, 234,993. So you'll pay 235 basically, right? So 35,000 extra that the bank will get from you, right?
Okay.
Now, when you have a little bit of room, you're able to pay it a little bit faster. So let's say your mortgage was, okay, your mortgage, let me go back. Your mortgage was 11,175. Let's say you round it to 1,200, right? You just add $25 every month more. It's not a lot, right? So 1,200. So you just pay $25 monthly. And let's say when you have a tax return every year, maybe you put in $100, you know, every year. So, or $1,000 every year, I mean. So $1,000 divided by 12, that's how much? That's $83 on top. So 25 plus 83, right? That's 108. So you add a little bit to the payment. Instead of paying the minimum payment that they ask you, you pay $108 a lot more every month. Now look, you saved 1 year and 4 months in your payment, in your mortgage. So you shave it off, you paid it earlier, and you saved $3,000. Do you see that?
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
So this is how you can save a little bit of money now. If you have some room, if you don't, that's fine. Now let's say I go back to the original loan. Instead of a 15-year loan, where I would have paid $35,000 of interest, let's say I do a 30-year loan. I just changed this data, only the length of the mortgage. Of course, when you raise the length of the mortgage, you'll qualify for a higher mortgage. But let's say we don't qualify for a higher mortgage. We stay with the original amounts. We stay with the first date of payment. We stay with the interest rate. We just change the date from 15 to 30. Let's see how much more do we pay. Instead of $35,000 of interest, let's see how much more we pay over the whole duration of the loan. $73,000 of interest. Do you see this amount?
Yeah, wow,
you
that's
see a big difference. It's a lot of money. $73,000 that you lose to the bank. You know, just by, instead of 15, 30, pushing it to 30. So yes, you'll pay less per month, but a lot more interest. So the idea is that you want to pay aggressively for your first house, and then eventually move. You know, you can pay aggressively for a first house. You can keep it for 5 years or maybe 10 years, and then sell it, move to a bigger house, and pay it as, you know, still fast, so that in 15 years you have a paid for home. For most of us, 15 years is before retirement. Most of us. Some of you, 15 years will be in retirement. You don't want to die with a mortgage. So you don't. You want to have a paid for home that matches your needs and paid for when you retire, so that you're able to live comfortably. Because let me tell you, most people when they retire, they struggle. They don't need to have a mortgage. So that's why it would be a lot beneficial for you to have a 15-year fixed mortgage. You will save a lot of money by just switching from 30 years to 15, right? And your payment would be $1,305. Now, if you're not able to afford that, sometimes they want to qualify you with a 30-year mortgage. They tell you, yeah, with a 30-year mortgage, we'll qualify you for a $500,000 house. Well, guess what? You can't afford it. If you cannot qualify for a 15-year fixed mortgage, and the payments to be no more than a fourth of the income, that means you're looking for a house that is too expensive. And that's very important. And if you don't qualify, that means you have to change some variables. You have to change either your income, or you have to change the price of the house. You know, there are some houses that are cheaper than $200,000. You have to go in the country maybe to buy them. Maybe it's not the best house. Maybe it's not a new house, but you can find it.
What if you put a bigger down payment?
You can do that too. Yes, that's correct. So then
that lowered the mortgage?
That would lower the mortgage, because that would lower the loan amounts, correct? So
Yes.
if you put a down payment, let me go back to this calculator here. The home value is 180. The down payment is 36. So 180 minus 36 is 144,000. So now your loan amount is 44,000, correct?
Yes.
And then your interests are only, you know, $25,000 instead of 35 that we said. So the bigger down payment you can have, the better it is. Let's say, so this is if you have a big down payment. I recommend 20%. Okay, let me talk about this. How to save even more. When you buy a house, you have two ways to buy a house: the quick way and the wise way. The quick way is to put 5% down. That's what most banks will recommend you. Put 5% down and invest the rest if you have anything left over. That's not a good way. Put as much as possible down, but a minimum of 20%. Why 20%? Because you have what's called PMI, private mortgage insurance. Mortgage insurance is something that the bank wants to be sure that you're going to be able to pay your mortgage. What if you're bankrupt? You buy a house, 2 or 3 months later, you see you can't afford it, and you bankrupt. What happens? The bank is probably going to lose money because they have to resell the house, and you just started paying it. That means you have a big loan amount, and the price of the house is very close to what you borrowed. You know, when they want to sell, the banks, when they want to sell, they want to sell fast. So therefore, they will reduce the price of the house. And maybe it will be under the price of the amount that you borrowed. So you borrowed 200, the house sells for 180. Well, they want their difference. So there is an insurance for the bank, but you have to pay it just in case you default on your payments. That's called private mortgage insurance, or sometimes mortgage insurance. That's only if you pay less than 20%. When you have a down payment of 20% or more, you don't have to pay this insurance.
I have a question, Etienne.
Yes.
So if you're a first-time homeowner, you can qualify for how much, up to how much the down payment is? 35, up to 35 you can take out if you have savings in RSP?
Oh yeah, I'll talk about RSP a little bit later, but I'm talking about cash savings, just your savings, okay. Regular savings, okay. Right? So your savings, if you have money laying around, you should use as much as possible for the down payment. Minimum of 5, but it will cost you more because you have to pay insurance, special mortgage insurance, or ideally 20%. And 20% is the wisest way because, first of all, you have a bigger down payment, so less money borrowed, so less interest. And also, you don't have to pay the insurance, private mortgage insurance. When I talk about down payments, I'm talking about cash money that you have in a savings account. You should always take your down payment from a savings account or from cash that you have laying around in the house, not from a retirement
savings.
Not from retirement savings. Retirement savings, the name of it tells you what it's for. It's for retirement. Because guess what? In Canada, I don't know if it's the case in most other countries, but in Canada, you can borrow on your retirement accounts to pay for your house down payment, but you're borrowing from your retirement. Borrowing means you have to reimburse it.
Yeah.
So this investment for retirement, if it's invested wisely, it's at a high interest rates. It gives you every year, it gives you high interests, 10, 12%. Should be. If you look at my next class next week, it will be invested well, 10, 12%. Now, how much do you borrow for the house? For the house, we borrow at 2.2%. So guess what? You're disconnecting your investment that is paying you 10, 12% a year, and you're putting it in a mortgage that you pay at 2.2%. So you're losing a whole bunch of money, and you're disconnecting your retirement plan, which means in retirement you have less. So it is not a good plan. You don't want to borrow from your RSP. You want to have money laid aside. You want to have saved money. And that's why if you have done your budget, you know how much money you can save. You have no more debts. You have saved every day, every month you have saved a little bit to be able to have a good down payment. All right, let's say you only have 5% down payment. It's $9,000. $9,000 is really easy to save in under, for most people, 6 months to a year. Right? So if you don't have at least $9,000 laying around that is not invested in a retirement account, you're not fully ready yet to buy a house. Because you cannot be tied up. You need to have room. You have your down payment, but you have also your other costs. You have other costs from the actual buying process. The lawyer that will process the sale. You'll have taxes when you come in. You have, in Quebec, we have welcome tax. I don't know in Ontario if you do have that, but you probably have to pay taxes when you actually buy the house. The first months, when the title is transferred to you, you have to pay the lawyer. You have to pay the municipality taxes. If you buy in June, for example, you have to pay half the year of taxes. The previous owner would have paid up to June. You have to pay from June to December, right? So you have to pay that. You probably have to pay moving costs, utility connections, the electricity connection, your internet connection, and so on. So you want to have a little bit of room for that. You don't want to be tied up with no savings, no emergency fund, and be in trouble, big trouble. And when you move in, you probably want to change your keys, right? Because the previous owner has keys, so they could access your home. You probably want to, buy maybe a few furniture, paint the kitchen, things that add up. So you want to have savings. You want to have your no debts. You want to have a fully funded emergency fund. We have talked about that in the previous class. So just go back and watch it if you didn't watch the second part. So fully funded emergency fund and no debts. And you want to have a down payment of a minimum of 5% plus all those costs of moving, of taxes, lawyer fees, and all of that. Don't borrow those costs. Borrowing is not a good solution. Borrowing is only because you can't do otherwise, but you should be able to at least save a good solid down payment, right? If you're not able to save a down payment yet, just wait another 6 months, just wait another year. There are houses everywhere. Even if you found the perfect house, if you're not ready, let it go. If not, you have house fever. You know what house fever is? I absolutely need this house right now. It's what kids do when they want something, right? It's this house right now. Well, guess what? It's not an adult behavior. You know the difference between a child and an adult? Children do what feels good. Adults devise a plan and follow it. So sit down, make your plan, and follow your plan. Don't be freaked out and think that you have to buy your house right away. It's not true. You don't have to buy anything right away. You can wait until you're ready. All right. So now, once you have saved your emergency, your down payment, you have calculated how much house you can afford. Now you're ready to buy, right? You have everything lined up. Down payment is ready. So now what do? You don't actually go to a bank. You actually want a mortgage broker, because what the banks will do is that they'll give you one rate, and it's usually not the best. Your bank is usually not the best bank for mortgages. You have in Canada, you have at least 10 banks and maybe more, and you don't know all of them. I don't think you have an account in all 10 banks. So you have to use a mortgage broker. A mortgage broker is completely free. They don't charge you any money, and they'll help you qualify with 10 different banks. So they'll go and shop around. They'll do your job for you. They'll go and ask each bank how much, what's the best plan you can have. And so they'll tell you which bank is the best, right? So for me, I had one bank and they told me, well, that bank is okay, but this bank has a better rate. So guess what? I'm not attached to any single bank. I'm not faithful to a bank just because I've used them forever. I'm faithful to whoever is the cheapest because they all do the same. A mortgage is the same no matter what bank, right? So go to the cheapest mortgage you can have, and the mortgage broker is going to shop among all the platforms, all the systems, and all the banks. They're called independent brokers. And the way they get paid is they have lots of clients. And so when they bring them, like let's say they bring 15 clients to a bank, they can negotiate a commission from the bank. So the banks actually pay them because they bring them clients. That's how it works. But they're not tied to one specific bank. They're really neutral, and they'll give you the best price. You can actually ask them to show you all the quotes they got from all the banks, and you can choose. And so this is called independent broker. You don't want a captive mortgage broker. A captive mortgage broker is when you go to the bank and they give you a mortgage broker that negotiates the mortgage with only one bank, right? So this is not a good agent. You want an independent mortgage broker that can shop among many banks. Once you have your mortgage negotiated or you have your mortgage plan set up, talk to your agent and try to negotiate further. Because the first quote the banks would give is not their best quote. You know, their best quote can always be negotiated. You can always go ahead and say, well, you see, you go to, for example, let's say you got a quote for a mortgage of 2.5 at your bank and 2.2 at another bank. You know, so you go to your bank and say, hey, I got a mortgage at 2.2 here. Are you going to match? And most likely they're going to match. Your bank is going to match because they want your business. So they want you to stay with them. So they will match that interest rate, 2.2%. Then you go to the bank that was offering you 2.2 and you say, hey, I got 2.2 with my bank. Are you going to beat it? Because if you don't beat it, why would I go with you? I'll stay with my bank. And most likely they'll beat it and they'll lower it to maybe 2.1 or 2.0. You see how you're doing? That's how you negotiate your mortgages. And believe me, a point of a percentage is thousands of dollars saved during the course of the mortgage. So it just takes 15 minutes to negotiate, just a few phone calls, and it can save you a lot of money. So always negotiate. Even if you get the best rates, always try to make the banks compete between each other. And their first quote is never their best quote. Now, one way you can work also and have a better rates is if you increase your credit score. So your credit score is usually calculated as in relation to how well you have paid your bills and how you manage money. So of course, once you get rid of debts and you pay everything in time, all your phone bills, electricity bills, and so on, your credit score will increase. So you want to have a high credit score, and then you can qualify for the lower interest rates. So check your credit score, check your partner's credit score, because both of them are taken into consideration. If you've had a bankruptcy in the past 8 years, it will ruin your credit score. If you have a bill that was not paid, it will also ruin your credit score. So it's important to pay all your bills on time, at least 2 years prior to considering buying a house. Everything, all your credit history needs to be clean and nice. This credit history doesn't work in Europe. It's a very different system. So I guess for those that are watching there, it will be different, but at least in North America, that's how it works. Negotiate down, again, negotiate a good interest rate. That's the only thing that matters. The interest rate is that golden number. Okay, so now you got your quotes. Your bank pre-approved you for the loan. You didn't borrow it yet. They pre-approve you for the home. Now you can go around and shop. Now you can go and visit houses. You don't actually visit houses before you're pre-approved by the bank. Because if you're not pre-approved and you find something, most likely you won't be able to make an offer, and the house will go before you're able to process all the paperwork with the bank. So get pre-approved. That pre-approval usually lasts 3 or 4 months. So they guarantee you the same rates, even if the market goes up or down. They guarantee you the same rate. If the market goes down, then they will match the, they will bring it down. The interest rate will go down, but it will not go up for 3 to 4 months, depending on the banks. Some banks go all the way up to 6 months guaranteed, but most does 3 to 4 months. And in 3 to 4 months, you can visit a lot of houses. So now once you're pre-approved, get yourself a good real estate. And when I say a good real estate, a stellar real estate agent. Don't get your cousin, your neighbor, your uncle that has sold one house in the past 10 years. Get a good real estate agent that is able to counsel you well and that has sold at least a minimum of 10 houses in the past year. Minimum 10 houses a year. That's a very minimum. And when I say that, is my counsel to you is go to, they have business associations, so real estate association, and you call them or you look at their websites and you see many times they give prizes, or they rank their real estate agents by the business they make. So the more houses they sell, the more clients recommend them, and they get there are some competitions within the circle of real estate agents, and they give them rewards and prizes, right? So you go, and many times it's published on their website who won the #1 prize last year, who won and so on. So you look at those. That's what I did for me. I look at all of the real estate brokers in Quebec, and I list them by top broker to the least, of course. So I looked up at the resume of the first broker, because you're basically hiring somebody. It's free. You don't pay for that, but you're hiring somebody. You want to have the best. So I looked #1. #1 was in Quebec City, which was not my town. So, discarded it. #2 broker, she was actually close by. So what did I do? I went to the post office around my town and I asked for a recommendation. I went to my landlord because she's buying a lot of houses. I went to my landlord and I went to a neighbor, and all three recommended me that same lady. So I went with that lady, right? So you ask for recommendations, you check online their resume, you call them up and ask how many houses they sell. And she had actually sold 200 houses in the past year. Her and her daughter, they worked as a team together, 200 houses last year, right? So that's business, and so she was able to recommend me very good things, what to look for when you buy a house. It was my first house. I didn't know anything about what to look for. And she was explaining me things. She helped me change a little bit. I explained her what I wanted, but she helped me change a little bit my focus. Like I wanted to buy in one area that was not as good. And she told me, well, this area is not as hot. The market is not as hot. So if you want to resell in a few years, you won't be able to resell really well. Yes, the houses are cheap, but it's not the best. So buy this area. This area is booming. Right now, the houses are cheap, but it will be booming. And guess what? In just 1 year, the price of houses was raised by 30% in my area. 30%. Thank God for COVID-19, because people wanted to move away from Montreal. They wanted to move because they're working remotely now through internet. So they wanted to move to the country. And so there was a boom and the prices went up by 30%. So if I wanted to, I could resell the house and just pocket the 30%. I don't want to move because that's a good house and I'm satisfied here. But I have a friend that also bought and is moving just for the profits. So a good real estate agent will give you good counsel, listen to them. And one thing that is very important is you should always, always check your house with a professional. How's it called? It's called an inspector. Inspect your house. It will cost you, once you find a house that you really like, that you can afford, you have been pre-approved for that house, then, and you like it, you have visited it, you liked it, and so on, make an offer conditional to an inspection. So write an offer. An offer can be withdrawn if you need to, but make an offer conditional to an inspection. And the inspection may reveal things that you have not seen that will be, and that will make you able to withdraw your offer. And of course your offer, but your mortgage broker will, your real estate will tell you your offer will be conditional to the approval of your loan and to the inspection. Of course, your loan will be approved because it's already pre-approved. So unless you lose your job, it's almost guaranteed that you'll have it. But the inspection, you find things. Now, what if you find things in the inspection? For example, for my house, I found small cracks in the windows, on the concretes by the windows, which is completely normal. That's no problem. We found that there was an air pump in the house that was making some noise. And there was another minor things which I can't remember right now. But what did I do? I used those two things. You can either use those issues in the house to either negotiate the price down and you will fix the work yourself. You will fix the things yourself. Or, oh, and there was a water in the air exchanger. So there was an air exchanger that had been running in the winter when it was really, really cold, like below -20. And it had condensated in the pipes and some water was in the pipes. So the pipes were sagging. So they had to remove the water from the pipes, which was a minor thing, but they had to do it. So I could have either negotiated the price down to account for that, for the repairs, or what I did is that I asked them to fix it. And so they called professionals, they fixed it. They showed me the receipt that they had fixed it. I went to verify it was fixed and we went ahead with a sale, right? But so you have those two options. For example, my friend that bought in the same town that I live, the roof needed to be changed. They couldn't see it because when you see the house, you see from the outside, you don't see everything. So the inspector would inspect everything. And they went on the roof, they saw that the roof needed to be changed. So instead of asking the previous owner to do it, they lowered their offer, which basically made a counter offer, and then which was accepted, and then they fixed the roof themselves after buying it. But you have to know how much it will cost and so on. So the inspector will be able to really help you for that, and you have to pay them, around $400. But that's worth it to not have a surprise. In Quebec, you have to look at things are different in Ontario, I'm sure, but in Quebec, for sure, you have a guarantee when you buy a house. If the house has a problem that predates the time of the sale, the previous owner is responsible for that. So let's say you had a mold issue in the house, and you want to, as soon as you buy the house, you want to remove that partition wall between the kitchen and the living room or whatever. You want to break that partition wall, and you discover some mold. The previous owner has to pay for that, and that can be a lot of money, right? So you want to be sure that that you have that. And when you have an inspector, the inspector will guarantee that everything he saw was fine. He will list all the deficiencies in the house. Don't be afraid of deficiencies. It's normal. Every house has things. My house is 11-year-old and it had a few things. It's normal. All the houses will have something. The older they are, the more things they have. But it's fine. Everything can be fixed for a price. So it's either you that pays for it or the previous owner. So make sure it's the previous owner that pays for it. Negotiate the price. And then once you buy the house, then you make your offer has been accepted, the inspector has seen the house, everything is great. Then you can negotiate also when you're going to move in the house. So you can negotiate to move in the house next month, 3 months from now, or 6 months from now. And then the previous owner will either accept or make a counter offer and negotiate that as well. Take your time for every single step. If it's not the right house, don't fight for it. Don't raise your offer by a lot just because you actually want this one. It's just a house. You'll find houses in every corner. You might like it, but it's okay. If it's not the right house and there's a price competition, just let it go. There will be another house for you, waiting for you next month, next week, some other time. Make sure that at least you visit 5 to 10 houses before you make an offer. 5 houses is good because you have a sense of the market. You see other houses of the same price in different areas, different towns, and it's always good to compare. If you like the first house after visiting 5 houses, you still like the first one, you can do another visit, and after the visit you can do an offer. But don't rush in you see one house and you just want to buy it. Just make sure you're familiar with the market. And one last thing, when you're considering a house, just don't consider just the house. Consider the potential for growth. Your house is your biggest asset. You want the price of your house to go up. So if you buy it in a good part of town and you maintain your house well, the value will go up. If you buy in the worst part of town and you don't maintain it, you don't paint it, you don't do anything, you don't maintain your lawn, you don't do any improvement to the house, it will go down in value. So you want to have an increase in value in your biggest assets, because one day maybe you have kids, maybe you want to have kids, so you want a big house. Maybe one day you want a smaller house because your needs will change, or maybe you want to move somewhere else. So your house, most likely you will sell it one day or another. So you want to sell it with a price increase. All right, so that's all I had for you tonight. And now I'll open the room for questions. So if you have any questions that you might want to add or ask, feel free. Also, if you want to run real numbers, after we close that session, I guess we can work one-on-one and work with real numbers. But do you have any general questions? Do you feel comfortable with the flow and the way it works? Anyone? Everything is good?
So everything is good. So I think your explanation was very good. So I think was very clear.
Uh-huh.
So one question I have actually, how much can you negotiate as a percentage? For example, if a house is $300,000,
that's where
how much do you think?
That's where your real estate agent will be able to counsel you the best. In some areas, yeah, that's why you pay them, because you actually pay them. Well, you don't pay them; the previous owner pays them, but they're paid. That's why you hire them, because they give you counsel, and their counsel is valuable, because you can save $30,000 just by negotiating, right? I saved $50,000. My house was worth $300,000. It was in the market for $300,000, and I negotiated to $250,000. I got it for $249,500, right? So I just made $50,000 in by hiring the right agent, basically. So you need to know, some areas you can negotiate down when the market is not too hot, meaning that the houses will sell maybe in a month or 2 months. They take about 1 to 2 months to sell. In some areas, the houses on the market, it stays 2 days in the market, they have 10 offers. So of course, if they have 10 offers, the one that will make the best offer will get the house. So then you have to actually outbid what they're asking. So if they're asking 300, you have to offer 305 or 310 to have a hope of getting the house. So your real estate agent really knows the markets. They're comfortable with the area. They know what people expect. They know how fast a house sells and how much hope you have. My broker told me that I could negotiate down $40,000. She said, you can try 50, maybe you'll get it, but I don't recommend it, but you can try. And if not, they will do a counter offer. So I actually negotiated more than that. I negotiated $60,000 less, and they told me no, $60,000 less. No, we don't want 240. We want 250. So I said okay. So they did. So they refused my offer and made a counter offer. What happened is that this house was $300,000. It was in the market for that, and it's the real value of the house. But it just happened by chance that nobody made an offer this week. So they waited a week before answering me. And after a week, they were waiting. They were hoping for another offer at 300,000, and they didn't get it. They had one at 240. So they said, no, 240 we can't, but we offered 250. And, that's how I got it. So it's a little bit based on negotiating and a little bit of luck as well, or I would say God's hand. but your real estate agent will be really a good investment. That's why you want the best one.
Is there a period of the
How
year
much
when
commission
it's the
did?
best?
I'm sorry?
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. Go ahead, Brother George.
So I was saying, is there a period of time when it's the best to buy a house?
Okay, yes. Okay, so the market usually you have in Quebec, people usually move July 1st. This is like a general rule. Most people move July 1st because that's when the I don't know why, but that's the history behind that. So basically people, since they're moving July 1st, they're usually looking and putting their house in the market in January, February, and March. So you have more choice in February, March, April to find a house in the market. You have more choice, more options, but you're able to negotiate maybe a little less. People during the rest of the year, you have less choice, but they're more in a hurry to sell because they sell for a reason. They have to move out of the country. They have to go somewhere. So just look. Yes, it's better to look at the beginning of the year. Don't worry about the snow. The snow doesn't prevent anyone from buying or selling. But yeah, February, March, April, that's the best time. Usually the market is really hot.
Thank you.
Yeah, Jacob, you had a question as well?
Yeah, I was just going to ask, how much commission did your agent charge? Because like you said, to go with the best ones, but...
Yes. The way it works, at least in Quebec, I don't know about Ontario, but in Quebec, you never pay for a real estate agent when you buy a house. The buyer never pays. The seller always pays for the agent. So when you have a seller, you have two ways of buying a house and selling a house, with an agent or without an agent. If the seller doesn't have an agent and you want one, then you have to pay for it. But if the seller has an agent, which most houses have, because you want to put your house on the websites and not just a sign in the yard, So most people go with an agent. An agent will always be paid with a commission from the seller. So the seller has a commission, maybe $20,000. That's their commission. If you don't have an agent, the seller's agents get the whole deal, $20,000. If we have an agent, the buyer has an agent, they split the commission in two, and everyone gets half.
Okay.
So that's how they get.
Yeah, that makes sense, I guess.
Yeah, that's how they get. So the buyer, because the seller has always more money, right? They're selling it, so they have a house, they have an asset already. They have a little bit more money, so they will pay for the commission. But you're looking for a house, you don't want to pay for that.
Yeah. And one other thing, you mentioned something about like if you start with a smaller house because you can't afford more expensive one. And then if you want to transfer your mortgage over later, is that really a good idea? Because then your mortgage is probably going to get bigger. And wouldn't it be better to just pay it off first instead of growing the debt?
That's a very good point. I don't, first of all, I'm not in the business of flipping houses. Some people do it, but most people lose money when in flipping houses. So be very careful in that business, especially for your first house. I don't recommend it. Now, when you buy a house, I'm not planning on staying in my house all my life. So at one point I will sell it. I don't know when. It might happen that my job will be transferring me somewhere else and I have to sell it before 15 years. So if you want to sell your house before the term, which I recommend 15 years or less if you can, you can easily transfer your existing mortgage to the new house, to the new deal. You don't necessarily need to have to borrow more. You can transfer your existing mortgage to the new home. And a transfer, it's an easy transfer. If the price of the house is equivalent, you don't need to borrow more. Transferring a mortgage is very easy, and you talk to your bank, it's very easy. If you need to borrow, if the price of the house that you're looking to buy is bigger, then you have to borrow the difference and increase your mortgage, right? In that case, first of all, when you sell a house, you have you have a profit. You've made a profit because you've paid down the mortgage. So you have a larger down payment for the new home. So maybe you don't need to borrow that much, right? But if you do need to borrow a little bit more, as long as it keeps the rule 15-year mortgage, fixed mortgage, no more than 25% of your income, I would be okay with that. I just don't want you to carry a mortgage for the rest of your life, right? So 15 years, no more, fixed mortgage, no more than 25% of your income. And as long as you're keeping those rules, it's okay. Probably, in 5 years or 10 years when you want to move, your income would have been increased. I'm hoping so. Your income is not staying fixed. So hopefully it has increased and then you're able to borrow a little bit more. But I don't, if you want to wait 15 years until you pay off this house and then buy another one for cash, good for you. But it's not all of us that can do that. But as long as it keeps the same point, 25% of your income, fixed rate mortgage for 15 years only. And then in the next class, we'll talk about investment. So you want to leave room for investment and how to enjoy retirement. This is especially important for those of us that don't have a lot of income, like a big income. If you're able to make $1 million a year, that you can easily buy a house in cash, waiting just a year and move forward. But most of us don't make that much money. All right. Any more questions?
Yeah, I just had one more.
Yes, please.
With building your credit score, you said before like it's better to not use credit cards, but can't that help with your credit score even if you don't use it, like you just have one? Can that help build your credit score? Okay,
yes, it will help your credit score, but it's a danger for you. So, the credit score is only for you to borrow money. I don't borrow money except for mortgages. So if you want to build it just for your mortgage, then I would recommend to get a credit card in that case, or to keep your credit cards. But instead of spending and then paying it, just pay it before you spend it. For example, you need to buy something, like this month you need to buy $1,000 on it. Just put $1,000 on it, extra, and then spend it. So basically it works like a debit card. You know what I mean? So you don't spend money.
I didn't know you could do that, but
yeah, you can do that. Definitely. You don't have to pay your credit card after the fact. You can just put money on it and then spend it.
If I may say something, I did the same thing actually with my credit card. I put money, like I paid more, right?
Yeah.
But I realized that my credit score didn't increase too much. Actually, it decreased a little bit. I don't know why.
Okay. What the credit score is it's not a score of your credit. It's actually a score of how much you love debt. and how much you're able to, pay your debts, right? So they encourage you to get debts. So they want you to have debt, but not so much that you can't pay it, just a little bit, just for them to get money, because they want money. That's what a credit score is how much money you give them. So if you have a balance every month, a small balance every month on your card, they will give you a higher credit score because you give them money. So they reward you with a higher credit score, but you don't want to do that. Look, even if you have an average credit score, you'll still get a great mortgage rates, especially if you negotiate your mortgage, as I explained, you'll still get a great mortgage rate, and there will be no problem. I don't encourage you to go into debt in order to have a higher credit score in order to borrow more money. That's a bad way of thinking. Also, just remember that a debt on a credit card is around 20 to 30%, depending on the credit cards. And a mortgage is around 2.5%. So why borrowing money there when you can, save a lot more? So also, even if you have an average credit score, I'm not talking about low credit score. That means you have a problem. But if you have an average credit score, you'll still be able to get a great rate with no problem. No banks will refuse, especially if you have a mortgage broker. They'll be able to shop very good rates for you. So I don't encourage borrowing. Also, just remember, you're not borrowing for 30 years. You're borrowing for 15. So even if you get a 2.5 instead of a 2.2 rate, you're still paying 15 years and not 30. So I don't encourage that. I don't encourage credit cards. I don't encourage debts. I don't encourage borrowing for a mortgage if you can avoid. If you have enough savings, just pay cash. All right. So I hope it helps. And if there's no more question, I think we can close.
Just one more quickly.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. But I was wondering, would you recommend ever to do like a 10-year fixed mortgage? Because you keep saying 15, but why 15 always?
Maximum 15. You can always do 10-year, 5 years, 2 years if you want.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Or 0 a year, which means paying cash, right? But maximum 15-year mortgage. The less you do, the better you earn. So for example, if you're not sure how you will be able to pay it, like in 10 years, for example, but you think you might be able to, just get a 15-year mortgage, get it approved for a 15-year, and pay it as if it was a 10-year. So with a calculator, you can calculate how much 10-year would make your monthly payment, and just pay it as every month as a 10-year, and guess what? You will pay it in 10 years. So
that makes sense.
Yeah. So, but don't get a 30-year mortgage, because then you'll be in trouble, because one day in your life, there will be an issue where you can't really pay everything, and you'll be tempted to pay less. So if you get a 15, for sure, in 15 years, you'll have your house paid for. And from there, you'll be able to build wealth and, not have a mortgage anymore.
Okay, thanks.
So 15-year will be a maximum. All right, let's close now.